Okay, peace, family. So, I am Tamika Muhammad with R.O.S.E Ministries. Just wanted to come on, and we're going to be talking about what can I do about my teenager? What can I do about my black son who is, living a certain kind of life? And I get this question all the time. So I decided to do just a little short message about it. I am also asking that you subscribe to my channel, Rose Ministries. I would really like your support. I appreciate your support for my channel. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I didn't want this to be something that was long and drawn out. So I did take some notes. So, as I had mentioned earlier, there are a lot of a lot of mothers who ask me about their teenage sons. And they always ask me after they see my book, which basically focuses on children 5 and under. And I know that it's very curious to you and to mothers when it comes to this subject. Why do I just focus with 5 and under? And what do I have to say about children who are older? So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So I wanted to be pretty straightforward and blunt, didn't want to waste a whole lot of time, have a whole bunch of chasers. So the question is, what can I do about my 16-year-old or my 17-year-old, 18-year-old, or even my 20-year-old son who is giving me a hard time and I'm having a hard time rearing him? And I'm just going to be totally honest and frank. The answer is nothing. You cannot do anything. You cannot do anything to change your son. But hold up. Don't get upset. By the time I hope you don't turn this video off, but just hold up. Because at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you the one thing I believe will help save your son and put him on the right track. So, at the root of this question is child development. So I just want to go over a couple of things just to throw it out at you for it to be in your face so that you will be able to understand from a developmental aspect some things that you can observe from your son. So, first of all, we're talking about young men who are actually in a stage called adolescence. So if we're talking about 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, we're talking about adolescence. And adolescence is the stage of ages 10 to 19. All right. So that is the stage that we're talking about. So what is happening in this stage of adolescence? There are a lot of things. It is a long period of time from 10 to 19. You have a lot going on. And one of the most powerful things that's going on, what the stage of adolescence is puberty. So your young son is experiencing a range of physical changes, physiological changes, experiencing voice changes. They have hair growing in private areas. They're also, their reproductive system is maturing. They are actually going through the process of being able to bear children. And this is a very serious, a very difficult and physically difficult time for our young boys. Our girls are going through it on their side, but the young men are also going through it. So we probably don't even really recognize all of the stuff that they're going through with the body changes and also the the social and emotional development, the effect, the very heavy effect that puberty has on social and emotional development. Because at this period of time, it is very important for our Black young boys to know and understand, or our Black young men to understand that you have support. This is something normal. You're going through something in life that is supposed to happen. You have my support. It may feel strange, but it's okay and it's normal. and you're going through it and you're not going through it alone. But this is one of the main things that we don't understand as parents, and we don't know how to address this kind of behavior. However, in us not being able to address this behavior, we rub them the wrong way. We don't say the right thing, or we seem insensitive. Remember, going through puberty, you have all of these hormone changes, and it's very easy for them to become sensitive about something. Very easy for them to become irritated and upset about something, because they're going through something that they've never gone through before. And this change is so in depth, it is so dramatic that it affects their social and emotional development. It affects their personality, their attitude, it affects everything about them. So, this is what we have to take into consideration. Another thing that we have to take into consideration is something that is called the magic decade, the first 10 years of life, which is called the magic decade, which means a lot of brain development. However, the first 5 years of life is a dramatic, a huge, a very critical stage, decisive even, of brain development, the first 5 years. And in those first 5 years, you have more brain development than throughout the rest of your life. So the first 5 years are crucial and decisive. But those 10 years is also still dealing with brain development. Our sons are still going through brain development. And this is important. So, also, we're going through, these are the early years of our brain development, setting that stage and setting that foundation. But that second decade from 11 to 20 is also another stage of brain development. And this is the stage that we struggle with the most. So during the second decade of brain development, we are in what is called formal operational cognitive development. And in formal operational cognitive development, it is characterized by the ability to think abstractly, to be able to think in an abstract way, to reason hypothetically, and engage in systematic problem solving and scientific making. So, this is where we are from 11 to 20. However, there is still an aspect of the brain that is not fully developed, and this is a part of the formal operational stage where it is finishing up, and it actually doesn't finish up until the mid 20s, or we usually say 25. And that area of the brain is called the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is responsible for executive functions like planning, organizing, problem solving, and reasoning. And all of this, as I just said, it does not fully come online until the age of 25 years old. So it's crucial. It crucially plays a role in controlling your motor skills. It controls language. It's responsible for your personality. So essentially, this frontal lobe is responsible for very high level cognitive processes, and it doesn't come online until the age of 25. However, we have 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds walking around here with adult practices and responsibilities and involved in adult activities. All right, so this area is not fully developed until the age of 25, but we're giving car keys to our adolescents. We're giving, cigarettes and liquor to these adolescent children, and we're wondering why we have so much crime. We're wondering why, we have so many car wrecks and so many different things are taking place amongst them. It's because they have not, really fully developed, and they are still at an age of basically a child. So this is one thing that we need to take into consideration, that we are entrusting adolescents with And with immature brain activities and with responsibilities that require high level of cognitive processing. And the enemy of our young black men, they understand this. They understand this. So they make it legal. They make 18 years of age legal for all of these adult practices. And they know that they're not mature enough to handle the responsibilities. They actually understand this. So I just wanted to tell you about that, let you know where your son is so you have a better explanation of who you're dealing with. Because that's one of the reasons why we have such difficult issues with our children. We don't know who we're dealing with because we don't know their level of development. And it's very important for us to know that because we can respond to that behavior correctly when we understand who they are, their level of development, and we'll know what to do. It's easier for us to handle them when we say, okay, hey, they're going through puberty. This is something that I can handle. This is something that I can support. I can support them with my love. I can support them with tenderness. I can support them with understanding, uh, making sure that they understand this is normal. Because if our young men actually knew that, it would give them the confidence to go through this stage without being embarrassed, without being um, held to a certain standard in a community, even though that's what they're going to do. That's just what this world does. You know, the enemy is very difficult, very hard on our young brothers. So this is what they do. But when we understand as mothers what our young boys are, what our young men are going through, then we are armed with knowledge and we can respond to the behavior, understanding, and being able to meet the developmental need of our young men by supporting them, by being in their corner, by saying, it's okay, you're normal, this is supposed to happen. All right. So we're going to move on to the next aspect of this. All right. So the first mistake that we make is we put too many adult responsibilities on them at too early of age. All right. So that's one of the first things that we do. That's a mistake. The next reason why I don't think we really can change that aspect of our young black men is because you cannot reverse child development. What we're dealing with is child development. What we're seeing in our young men is a stage of development that they're in that somewhere along the line, we did not engage in a sense to bring in certain characteristics or certain attributes that needed to be in place when they got a certain age in their adolescent years. So we're going to talk about that. So we're going to use the principle of cooking. All right. So I like to use the principle of cooking. So can you unbake bread? Can you uncook a pie? Can you separate a lasagna? Can you separate spaghetti? Can you uncook um, an omelet? No, you cannot. Because all of the elements that it took to bring this recipe or this meal together have now been fused into a chemical process under heat or boiling water. And now it cannot go back to the original state or it cannot be separated. So you have a recipe where you have all of these individual pieces coming together, integrated and to combine into this one unit, and then it goes through a chemical process. This is the same way with in child development. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he teaches us in How to Give Birth to a God, and I'm going to paraphrase, that mother has the ability to write her thoughts on the brain of her unborn child, and whatever she has writ, it is permanent. All right. So we have heard this, and I'm really just paraphrasing. He also said that only God can undo her destructive work of the child. So if there is anything that has been done that is ill affecting the child, uh, a delay in development, some kind of delay in their personality, or a negative gene or some kind of negative character attribute in their personality, this is something that is now permanent because it is set in the child. It is hardwired. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Now, this particular aspect that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was talking about comes from a theorist by the name of John Locke. So John Locke, who was a child psychologist, theorized on this aspect of child development. It is called tabula rasa, which means blank tablets. And the theory just states that all children are born with a blank mind, a blank slate, and through the experiences and through the influences, they write on the child's brain. That's basically what it is. So this is a real theory that is a part of the philosophy of the United States Department of Education as it pertains to early childhood education. And this is a theory that is applicable in child care programs. All right. So, as I mentioned, childhood development, the first 5 years of life are decisive. They are critical. Okay. The human being goes through processes that are irreversible. Our influences and experiences that we have in the formative years of life, the first 5 years, they become the foundation of an adult. So when we are dealing with these processes, this is the beginning of this hardwiring, this permanency of your your child. And everything, it counts here. Everything counts here. Their attitude, their personality, everything, it counts. So by the age of 5, the brain is developed in 90%. 90% of the brain is already online by the age of 5. Now, there's a whole lot more of brain development that we have to go, as we already talked about earlier, but most of it is online at the age of 5. It's developed at the age of 5. So this is what is happening with the brain. It's going through a process called synaptogenesis. Synapto means brain connections, and genesis is the beginning. So at the beginning, the brain is being uh, growing in the womb. This is where it starts with what is called proliferation and pruning. Proliferation means there's an abundance of cells. There's trillions and billions and trillions of connections that are happening at the beginning stages of this brain growing. So during this process of growing of the brain, what is actually happening is the brain is taking in the thoughts. The brain is taking in the mother's personality, the attitude, all of this information that is becoming part of this child's brain is coming from the mother. And the proliferation of these cells are basically going into the going into the child's brain, forming the brain of this child. Then it goes to a stage called pruning. Pruning is the elimination of the weaker cells. So, say, for example, language, the language area of the brain. If we are not reading to our children, if we're not talking to our children, if we just come home and go upstairs and go look at TV and we never say anything to our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year old, then they're going to have issues with language. All right. So the brain says, okay, in the language area, we don't need all the cells in this area. So I'm going to eliminate some of these. So now we have a child that's struggling to speak, that's struggling to read, who have issues with language. So that is the example of what's happening in pruning. So for in the first 5 years of life, you have this constant, this stage of proliferation, pruning, proliferation, pruning, proliferation, pruning, all the way up into the age of 5, where it's the biggest stage of cells and pruning. And so in the womb, you have the child being influenced by the mother's thoughts and the mother's attitude and um, her personality, her prayers. And it's also a part of a study or a science called epigenetics. Epigenetics is when it is a part of the original DNA, not necessarily changing the original DNA, but being able to modify certain genes as it pertains to influence and as it pertains to environment. And the mother is definitely able to influence an unborn child and that environment. So um, now this is dealing with the dispositions or what the child is predisposed to, is dealing with the attitude, the personality, the temperament of the pregnant mom and the influence over their environment. In other words, the prenatal conditions of her surroundings, the prenatal conditions of the mother and her surroundings. The first 5 years of life is the hardwiring of a child, and it is permanent. So by the time they reach the age 5, the proliferation and the pruning, enough has taken place for that time. Now it is hardwired. Now it is permanent. So whatever it is that young boy did in his first 5 years of life, it is done. It is there. Mother makes a significant contribution to her child's development and outcome as an adult. Okay. So from that perspective, you cannot change the young man. Now, another thing that I want to say is these first 5 years, they create an outlook for the first 50 years of your life when you look at it that way. Because who a child is at 1, they are at 10. Who a child is at 2, they are at 20. Who they are at 3, they are at 30. Who they are at 4, they are at 40. Who they are at 5, they are at 50. So those first 5 years are very, very important when it comes to our engagement and when it comes to instilling certain dispositions, predisposing that child to certain characteristics that we want them to exemplify in their adult life. It is very, very important. So now I'm going to move on to what I think will change young black men. I'm going to be straight to the point. I've already gone over into 20 minutes. I didn't want to go that long, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that the only way that the black young boys can change is if they are exposed to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. So, one reason is it uninstalls the dispositions, the negative dispositions about negativity and death. The teachings, what we call the life giving teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad, they are filled with knowledge and information and wisdom and understanding that oscillates the brain cells and unlocks the brain into a way where we are able to literally understand in the plain language. And it uninstalls all of this bad stuff that we have had in our mind, and then we are predisposed to dispositions of righteousness. We are predisposed to kindness and humility, brotherhood and sisterhood, community and unity, service and nation. Another reason why the teachings are ideal for our young black men is that it reorientates the mind with the knowledge of self and the knowledge of God. And this is it is the only way that we can, as we say, get rid of that negativity. So we change the mind. We change the mind when you know who you are. We change the mind when we understand who the black man is, when we understand what we've gone through and why we went through that and what must be done, the time and what must be done today. All right. Also, the nation provides examples by modeling good behavior. And this is what we are taught as early childhood educators. It is important that the teacher, that the educator can be an example. And the Nation of Islam provides examples of people who have submitted their will and their lives to practicing the teachings, and they have changed, their lives have changed dramatically. So I would say in closing that if your son is in the adolescent stage from 10 to 19, I suggest you find your local mosque. Find your local mosque. Go to noi.org, find your local mosque, and go and meet with the FOI brothers in the FOI class and join the class. And if you are a mom who have children 5 and under, you and we need to have a consultation. You need to have a consultation with me. You can go to Rose Ministries on my Instagram and click the link in the bio, and you can set up a consultation. I can tell you about my 6 week program, one on one coaching program for mom. I can also talk with you about my 8 week course that is called Building Better Moms, that is laying the foundation, going more often to the information that I gave to you tonight, talking more about that information, sharing it with you, going deeper off into it so that you will be able to engage with your children, understand their level of development, and be able to respond correctly to their behavior. Even if you're a mom, you've been a mom for years, it doesn't matter. You still need to be able to understand your child's level of development so that you can respond accordingly to their needs. So, that is my message for tonight. I wanted to thank you so much for listening. I hope you heard something that is going to lift your spirit, get you where you need to be, and help you to understand where your son is and who your son is. Once again, you can go to Rose Ministries and click the link in the bio for a consultation. And for those of you who have those strong young black men that's struggling, find a mosque, join the FOI class. And I want to thank you all so much. Don't forget to subscribe. God willing, we'll talk to you again soon. Peace.